Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we're wrapping up now our overview of the world situation from the point of view of tracing the crumbling of the U.S. strategic position, the failure of the color revolutions in Ukraine, which is now rolled back. Iran has failed. And now Italy. Here we have the Violet Revolution, Viola. The Violet Revolution in Italy is an attempt to oust Berlusconi, and it is indeed motivated significantly by hatred of Berlusconi, just as the Obama phenomenon is not to be explained without the hatred for Bush Cheney. And indeed, much of the anti-Obama opposition today has a very strong element of hatred of Obama. And in both cases, this is understandable. But remember, Good Friday, one of the big things in Christianity is you're not supposed to be blinded by hate. I think that would be a very mild reading of Christianity on this score. And I think that's good advice. So let's not be blinded by hatred of Berlusconi to the point where we then fall into the hands of the Anglo-Americans. The Violet Revolution is supposed to overthrow Berlusconi, and why? Berlusconi is one of the big supporters of this South Stream pipeline, along with Turkey, the Italian state oil company, Eni, and a whole complex of oil technology and civil engineering that the Italians have, which is quite formidable, is a big asset for building the South Stream pipeline, which is a project of Putin. And, of course, Berlusconi is a personal friend of Putin. Remember back in those sex scandals last summer when we had the tapes of Berlusconi and his girlfriend, and he tells her to wait for him in the bed that had been given to Berlusconi by Putin. So there it is in a nutshell. The Violet Revolution ignores basically this and proceeds on the basis, I think, largely of hatred, particular demagogy. You have the De Benedetti finance empire and De Benedetti's media empire, particularly the newspaper La Repubblica. The other components of this fit into place around this. And you've got this character Santoro, and on the Italian state television, the RAI, the RAI, and his friend Travaglio, who do a character assassination job on Berlusconi periodically in front of fairly large crowds. It's a very interesting situation because you have a state-controlled, government-controlled broadcasting entity which is going after the prime minister in a very partisan way. Indeed, some would say inciting some of these events. But the main thing about this is it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Part of it has to do with the fact that the Violet Revolution has no charismatic leader, or indeed any leader. It's a whole hodgepodge of groups. You've got the old Italian Communist Party, the PCI, now calls itself the Democratic Party, not even Democratic Party of the left, but Democratic Party under this character Bersani, who is a colorless bureaucrat. And you've got the other forces. There's the demagogue Di Pietro, a former prosecutor who was part of the destruction of the Italian political system back in the 1990s under the banner of anti-corruption. So that's all going on. But they all fight among themselves. Di Pietro can't get along with these other people, and they can't get along with him. You've also got the comedian Beppe Grillo, kind of like sort of a vaguely left-wing Glenn Beck figure. So this is all going on, and that's the Violet Revolution. The Vatican, as part of this, the attacks on the Vatican this week have to do with the fact that the Vatican is significantly arrayed with Putin Berlusconi, with this developing axis. And the idea, of course, being that if you want to have a color revolution in Italy, you've got to massively destabilize the Vatican. So that is the story. Why do they pull out the long-known stories of a pedophile priest and dish that up with a hysterical worldwide campaign of the Anglo-American media right now? So that's what it is. And indeed, it's a sign of weakness to some extent. We have attempts to force the Pope to be deposed in civil cases here in the United States. This will not happen because the guy is, after all, the head of state of an independent country, the city of the Vatican City existing as a state. as the license plates say. So there's pretty much the summary. Now, most interesting in all this is the British. And, of course, the British always play a big role in these things. And what we've had now is the committee, one of the committees, the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Commons, coming out and saying that it's better not to talk anymore about the special relationship of the U.S. and the British. Of course, in 1940, Winston Churchill was quick to invoke the special relation to get U.S. help against Hitler. And similarly, in 1917, when the British and the French were about to collapse, they needed the special relationship. But now this is being jettisoned. And, of course, what this does is bring to the fore the tremendous resentment of the U.S. by forces in the British ruling class, especially the aristocratic Malthusian ones, people around the royal family and City of London and the Foreign Office, the court, and the rest of it. So what we're told now is that as a result of these hearings that have been taking place into the to the Iraq War, and of course the crimes of Bush and Cheney, which deserve to be stressed again, you now have a developing consensus inside the permanent civil service bureaucracy in London, the people who run the regime, the people in the Foreign Office, the people in number 10 Downing Street, the permanent types, right, the people who are going to be there on a career basis, that it's time to get some significant distance from the U.S. Now, that would indicate that this perspective is that the British are working from is one of the emergence of a chaotic world situation, the relative collapse of the U.S. position, which is what we've been talking about. Certainly they're correct on that one, and that somehow the British can come out of this being more or less a part of the European Union, but not part of the Eurozone, and therefore having the pound as their candidate to become the dominant currency in the world, believe it or not. And, of course, for the pound to become the dominant currency, the world has to descend a great deal further into chaos than it is now. Remember Niall Ferguson, the expert in Geschichtskletscherei, the assembling of historical arguments out of odd pieces, right, the sort of bricolage of history. So he, remember, about a month ago, came out with his article in Foreign Affairs that the U.S. may undergo a rapid, surprisingly quick collapse, and he went back to various empires in the past, and this is possible. But remember, the task for us is not to come up with more radical or more catchy formulations that the world is collapsing or that there's a world depression. The task of politics for people of goodwill and intelligence is to come up with solutions. And organizing solutions are urgently needed. But in the meantime, if you can't get those every day of the week, what you can always do is have programmatic solutions, economic program, an economic recovery program. That is the essential tool right now. But you've also got to have then an idea of political forces that might converge to create an opposition to the existing regime, indeed to the Democratic and Republican parties as a whole. Now, Niall Ferguson is not interested in that. He's sort of gloating and schadenfroh on what's happening to the U.S. And, of course, the British experience, the bitter experience of Suez in 1956 when Eisenhower cut the ground out from under them when they invaded Egypt. This is never far below the surface. So you see that going on. And I think we've done justice to Russia. I think we could say much more about China. Google now being kicked out of China, and the increasing nationalism of the masses in China, which I think is the thing that you've got to focus on, that whatever any government regime in Beijing wants to do, they are now circumscribed by the fact